that you need to use Hadoop, Fetch-based, whatever you're using today. If you're dealing with petabytes of data, even with MySQL, you're considered a big data person right now. One of the announcements that they have is MySQL for RDBM, structured and unstructured data. I think I just saw it outside. And SQL Server 2019, which is in preview, has got Spark clusters on top of it. So please do not limit yourself to technology and say, I am not using Hadoop or Cloudera or HDInsight, so I'm not a big data developer. Take it out of your hearts, take it out of your mind. One more thing is, some years back we would ask people, are you all working on data in an application development conference? And people would often say no. The people who generate the most data is from the application side. They store it somewhere, they verify it, so that we're all doing data, big data in some way or the other. So since it's a very brief time, half an hour, but I'm here, it's going to be a light overview of what we have to offer and how are you going to use it. But I'm there for the rest of the day, we'll catch up sometime to discuss whatever you have in depth. So, there's a session takeaway. As long as you see what you can do with open source analytics and understand the challenges and the options that you weigh when you make a decision architecturally, we've made good use of this half an hour. Okay. So I always start, the usual numbers on the top is something that you're happy to see. The spend on data is increasing, the spend on cloud is increasing. Has anybody dissected other than this conference and said that 55% of the spend is going to be on open source technologies? You take AWS, you look at Microsoft, we said 33% of VMs that are deployed is open source. Now it is roughly 50-50, okay? But then it's okay because we as technologists are here to solve a business problem. If you do technology just for the sake of technology, then it's a very, very niche world out there in terms of research, right? So technology exists to solve business problems. 55% of the spend is happening on OSS because you want to be on multi-cloud, you would want to move out. And big data is not just Hadoop and Spark. There is Kafka, Flink, Presto, H2O.ai, Data IQ, and things like that, right? So the numbers here, the cloud is growing faster. CAGR is compounded annual growth rate, but OSS is growing faster than the cloud. Okay, MySQL adoptions is the highest today and the highest in terms of growth. So what is the state of on-premise Hadoop distributions and why are we talking of this? These are all extracts which have been taken from newspapers, from digital media in print, and said that everybody is struggling in some way to run big data wherever they are running, whether on open source, because it's not there on the cloud. Even if it's an open source adoption on the cloud, it is slightly difficult to do it. So if you think, have you made the right choice with all of this? We will go ahead and see. What are we offering in HDInsight? First thing, we will say it's 100% Apache open source code. The number of contributions that Microsoft makes to GitHub is very, very high. It has no dependencies on HDP. So any questions you have around that? We'll start with a bit of history on HDInsight. The first definition that was written for HDInsight is offering big data solutions on Azure, on cloud. It was born in the cloud, on Windows. Okay, why Windows? Because up until that point in time, Hadoop was the only alternative. You could do that only on Linux. As HTTP or Hottenberg's data platform, who were one of our partners, took the big data versions and made that available on, from the open source world, they could make it run on Azure, on Windows. That was made available on Azure. That is the definition of HDInsight. Today, the definition of HDInsight is a little different. We have no dependency on any partner. Okay. The source code is completely owned. It's as an Apache open source code, and we do things on top of it. Bugs are fixed on top of it, and data ingestion can happen. So there is no fuss migration of workload. Everything that we build will always have how can you bring data into the system. There are data migrations, data adapters, and so on and so forth. But here is a no fuss migration. And curated application for a wide variety of use cases. The use cases on big data, again, we'll hold it a little for a lighter conversation when we meet. Why should you use HDInsight? Because the rest of the things is, if it is open source, you could use any other open source. That's because we give you that availability of 99.9%. There's cluster health monitoring. Ambari came in built in with the first version of HDInsight, but along with that, it is complemented by using log analytics. Okay, log analytics is something that's available out of the box. and you can do a lot of cost control to intelligent auto scale. Do not have to write too much with it. The last thing, Azure AD, Kerberos authentication, we give it out of the box again. So you have role-based authentication for everything that you do. That means we are securing things. Can you put HDInsight into a separate VNet? Comes out of the box. You just have to configure and say which NSG, which subnet to use, and then we are all set up for that purpose, right? So we are saying we are open source, customizable, extensible, at the same time we are enterprise ready. Now the adoption of open source starts with the community generally and a lot of startups, right? We are saying here we have something which is enterprise ready, managed and secure. What is it moving forward? First thing, we have a faster release cadence with the acquisition of GitHub, the code being there. There are a lot of Apache projects, okay? We also support Flink, Druid. There's going to be support for availability zones as soon as it comes up. Built on Azure, it integrates with a lot of our things if you want to do reporting and things like that. Now there's a connector for SQL data warehouse, okay? So why is that important? Because how do we use big data? We throw in a lot of data, we churn something, we might do Spark, we might do some kind of ETL, ELT activities, and the output is again available as a TXT or a CSV. You need to put it somewhere in order to report. So there are built-in connectors, and these are the advantages that you get when you use HDInsight. And we've done it over time, and there's data and skew detection which happens automatically, okay? So it's built on Apache distribution but delivered and supported by Microsoft 100%. Why are we speaking of HDInsight today? I spoke of MySQL because that kind of tends to come naturally, but this being 2x in growth in consumption in HDInsight, there are people running 1,500 clusters, 800 nodes, 800 nodes, 16,000 cores, billions of batch jobs per day, so many million Spark jobs per day, and so on. So the numbers are what HDInsight is being used and built today, so it's here to stay and in the enterprises. So what are the patterns and best practices, right? Here is where we take off on a different tangent. There's corporate data, which you will report in some way, okay? If you don't recognize the yellow guy on the right hand side, that is Power BI, has got 64 different connectors to a lot of sources and Excel and things like LLAP if you want to do that. You have corporate data which comes in. There's a cold path. Anything to do with big data was generally a cold path. So you use Spark, Hive or Pig on HDInsight, do an ETL and put it onto Azure Blob or Data Lake Store. Both of them are just storage houses for data. And then you do an ad hoc query or you have a querying layer. In that, this audience will be more familiar with Spark and HBase. The one we have in the middle is Cosmos DB, which is our NoSQL store. Okay, it's called Cosmos because it has got infinite storage capacity. One of the tiers we have is infinite. We not only give you guarantee on the availability, we also give you guarantee on the throughput. You can write in less than 15 milliseconds and read back in less than 10 milliseconds. That means the average time is going to be far less than that. And there are adapters for Mongo and things like that. So this is the cold path. And then you have the hot path where data comes in from different devices and sensors. For that again, you can use Kafka on HDInsight, do some kind of stream analytics, streaming of data, put it into some kind of a NoSQL store and visualize again. This is generally how the architecture is designed, either for a cold path or a hot path. And in most cases, both of them would exist side by side. So, what is it that we add? The bottommost layer, right? First thing is data factory. Data factory is an ingestion pipeline, okay? For people who are trying to kind of scram there and see. So, Azure Data Factory is an ETL, ELT tool in which you can write Pig scripts, Hive scripts, SQL scripts, C# script. As long as you have an executable, it's a hybrid tool. So, you can move data from any location to any location and do some amount of cleansing. Not only that, if you're on the cloud and you need to optimize cost, you can spin off a cluster at the time of need, process it and kill the cluster. Okay. All this is something that Data Factory will allow you to do. Active Directory, I don't have to speak on that. And then it comes built in with network security groups. So there's a route table, there is UDP. You can kind of decide who will have access to those clusters. And then there is a key management service. Okay, so we have a vault of our own. If you don't want anybody else to know the passwords, only the application will directly pick it up from there, can happen. And an Azure Log Analytics which will help you analyze all of it. This governance layer is of immense value when you're trying to prove that you are GDPR compliant and so on and so forth, because Data Factory also gives you the lineage that is needed. Alright. Now, what are the different types of Spark clusters you can have? Almost anything and everything, right? So, Kafka is there, Storm is there, HBase has got HBase Infinix, Interactive Query, there's only LLAP, which is the alternative right now. We support Zeppelin, Jupyter Notebooks, Hadoop and Spark available, Oozie, Scoop, MapReduce and Hive. All the different kinds of clusters that you see are supported right now. And then, so we will try to figure out the many things, right? We'll go through each one in the circle and discuss various options. We'll start with these analytic workloads. Would you use Spark or Hive? Is there an easy answer for that? Okay. So let's see what the considerations are. If you're trying to do, what is Spark basically? It is every processing happens in memory. Yes? Yes. Okay, there are 5 people who have said yes to that answer. They are the same ones who raised their hand saying they're working on Hadoop. So let me, for the rest of you who are not raising hands, I'm going to repeat myself for 2 sentences, right? We started big data with 2 notions in mind. When I say we, I mean the world started using Hadoop to do 2 things. One is, in BI reporting, everybody was moving data from an OLTP system to an OLAP system. Movement of data was very, very expensive. Okay, so we said in big data, we will not move the data, we will move the code to where the data is and process the data there, because that we are not making duplicate copies. The time taken to copy data is large. The second thing we said is, we don't need server class machines, anything will do. Okay, this was true, but nobody anticipated that data will grow at this size. So people started making the disks faster. You moved from an HDD to an SDD, from a SATA disk to some other disk, and finally everything started happening in memory. That is where we had the rise of SAP HANA. We have tables which can be put in memory and so on. So here all the data computations happen in memory. If you're doing something like batch, streaming, interactive query, ETL scenarios, machine learning use Spark because it has got like 300 libraries on which you can work there, and there are rich libraries. So for that, use Spark. What is Hive? When people started doing big data processing, the big data processing generally used to happen only on textual content, right? Then there was a lot of number crunching we needed to do. If you wanted to get like count, sum, average, how in the world would you do that? Pretty tough. So people came up with Hive, where you could have asset properties and you could have rich SQL functions to do things. So, you know, materialized views, caching, row column access. If you wanted to do something like that, use Hive. Now, we have got a few more guidelines. If you are simply doing batch processing, output to structured data, you can use Spark or Hive. If you are doing batch analysis on historical data, streaming, use Spark. Anything to do with streaming in real time, because it's in memory, use Spark. If you are trying to do data warehousing and BI reporting, not that you can't do it in big data because the volume is high, use Hive. Okay. One thing that we wanted to do it, generally Spark and Hive has a meta store. Okay, a meta store is what holds a catalog of where the data is, what kinds of data and things like that. That is combined. In the next version of HDInsight, there are going to be separate meta stores, so you can just use Spark or Hive separately. And then, hot path, would you use streaming Spark or Storm? One thing is, Storm is kind of dying down, okay, but Storm has got this thing called Trident, okay, which was a special library built on top of it. Where would you use Storm? It's for the real-time ingestion, real-time low latency jobs. But still, Storm is very cost-effective right now if you're doing things like social media application or order processing, like in an ERP, huge ERP system. If you want to do anomalous behavior detection, I am normally spending in INR on my credit card. If I have a USD, have I done that transaction? Okay. Normally, if the spend is like 5,000 rupees, suddenly if I swipe 50,000 rupees, have I really done it, or has my card been stolen and used out of context? If you want to do any cleaning and aggregation or live data enrichment from various different fields because you want to add value to it, then use stream. Okay. So we would say in this case, go with Spark. We've discussed the analytical workload. What are the 2 options we had in storage? One was the blob store, the other is the data lake store. Okay. Blob store is what we came up with first, and then an improvised version of storage was the data lake store. In data lake store, you can store objects in hierarchy. You can access it through URI. there are certain advantages. The size of each file that you input can be pretty high, though blob also, is pretty, it can take up a lot of things. And what capacity you can store, I mean petabytes and zettabytes is what we are speaking of in ADLS Gen 2. So use either HBase or ADLS Gen 2. We would say that you use ADLS Gen 2 for a lot of things. If you are already an Azure user and on ADLS Gen 1, please migrate to Gen 2 because it makes sense to migrate to Gen 2. It comes up with a lot of additions. It's not like a delta change over this one. And if you are on blob, it is okay to use blob for now for some time unless you have a need to move to ADLS Gen 2. Okay. That was analytics and storage. What do we have under security? Now, this is the pizza slide as we call it, right? We always said what is it that the platform providers will give and what is where is it that you have to do certain things. So as you can see with the color difference, the physical infra security. Will there be theft? Will there be fire? Will there be something else? Will there be water seepage? Taken care of by the data center. Virtualized infra security. Can somebody go and access something? Can they physically damage? Can somebody get into it even remotely? And here we start with the software layer. You can't do that. Okay. The rest of the things, you have to take care of the network security, for which there is VNet and inbound NSG rules and outbound traffic rules. So when there are inbound and outbound rules, your data is safe and secure. So we are compliant for data for HIPAA, for PSI, for PCI, for ISO, and there's a government regulation called MITI. We are also compliant with MITI for HDInsight for network security. So basically inbound and outbound is controlled, data is very, very safe. You have to take care of the OS patching. If you need help with OS patching, our partner ecosystem can help you with that, but you have to take care of the operating system because we don't know what operating system will you use and for how long. The app and the middleware is completely yours. We provide AAD, Azure Active Directory, but if you want to use Ranger or Solar, then you can go ahead and use it, but protect it. And lastly, the data security. So ACL is access control list. If you're using ADLS Gen 2, it comes automatically with ACLs. Do a TLS encryption, transparent layer security, and have a customer manage the keys, refresh the keys periodically, do all of this. Doable, out of the box, help provided, but you own the responsibility. The application team, the data team, the people with IP own the responsibility for doing these things. Well, now that we are safe and secure, what are the things we have? I already mentioned that we have UDRs, okay. So some kind of routing tables we have as to what data can go in from where to where and who has access to it. The second thing that we have is UDR. The third thing is the firewall subnet. So like I said, if you wanted to do anything from here, from network, operating, app, middleware and data security is helped by these three things that we see over here. Okay. And then we also have got enterprise security packages. So you can see that if there's always a user scope, the passwords are hashed, okay. And similarly, as you can see, if it's a domain user, then how do they get to access and all is logged and done. So in terms of security, you don't have to worry. The battle of cloud is won. If there are any questions, even for banking applications, can it be deployed on cloud? The answer is nobody asks these questions anymore, okay. If you need help still to convince your customer as to why it needs to move on to cloud, especially for security reasons, reach out to one of us. We will do the needful because we satisfy everything that is required and is readily available. So, what is it that we have out of the box for monitoring? Ambari is what people will be familiar with. You had the tool from a long time. It measured like CPU, memory, disk utilization. It also managed some jobs and stuff like that, right? It's just not HDInsight cluster metrics, but any PaaS service on Azure has got a list of metrics that it can check. It can already give you this out of the box. Now the metrics cluster has got a few more things. And on top of it, we have got log analytics. So you can create your own custom dashboard in terms of what you would want to monitor. Okay. So what's new is you can see Ambari alerts and metrics in log analytics. So Ambari useful. Log analytics is what we did. We take the Ambari alerts also into log analytics and give you dashboard. Gateway login attempts, SSH logs, Ranger audit logs. So if you're using one of your things, which is a third party component as far as Microsoft is concerned, that is also integrated in terms of monitoring. Okay. how do we manage costs, and how does cost management, why is cost management easier and better on the cloud, right? So we have got different types of VMs, memory optimized VMs, general capacity VMs, CPU intense rich VMs. You can pick and choose what kind of master nodes and data nodes you want, okay? Some regions are cheaper than these other regions, so if you're not very particular about where data needs to be processed, do that. Delete the clusters when they are not needed, because you don't have to go and do a lot of work to create those clusters. Once you create a cluster, you can download it as an ARM template, and ARM is almost like a JSON like thing, so you can spin it off when you need. You can automate it using PowerShell, you can automate it using Data Factory, okay? So delete the clusters when they are not needed. Scale down the clusters when they are idle, so you can auto scale based on schedule or on load, which is a preview feature, okay? So this would mean you can look at the cluster size, you can auto scale configuration, pay for only what you need, and easy monitoring, which will help you optimize the costs. If you are moving to Azure, doing cost calculations, or any other cloud for that matter, right, and saying that on-prem is is cheaper, there are 2 or 3 things that you need to kind of always consider, right? First thing is, how much of uptimes are you guaranteeing? What is the RTO, RPO? Okay, even if it is not a system which is ACID, which is where it needs to be up 24/7, what is the guarantee? Second thing is, if you want your application to be certified for GDPR or for HIPAA or something like that, doing it on one of the cloud providers who is already certified will take care of 80% of the base requirements that is needed. So only your application needs to be certified, which makes it easier. Third thing is, what is it that you get out of the box? I mean, cost battle is long gone. If you invest in a machine today, see, the hardware cost and the software cost nobody is speaking of, but let's say you buy an i5 machine, a series of i5 machines, because that is what makes sense. Tomorrow it becomes i7, and then i9 gets released, and then you feel outdated pretty rapidly. So also the licenses of any software tool, right? If you're using SQL Server for something, and if you buy SQL 2012, then it becomes 2014, 2017, 2019, probably there could be a 2020, and then the newer features is something that you will need, right? So all these license tools, they also have software assurances, ways to upgrade them and things like that, but because the hardware is changing so rapidly and the technology is changing so rapidly, you are not bound by anything on the cloud. You can destroy the older set, spin off a newer set faster. So also the testing becomes easier, because you can do innumerable amount of test cases and spin up, right? It's not that I have only one test environment. If you want a second test environment for a hotfix, you can do that. So cost battle is something that is long gone. Again, now the last thing is the migration piece. Why should you use, and what is it that we offer out of the box for migration? Okay, first thing is, people would not, what are the triggers to migrate, right? A shrinking investment on the on-prem ecosystem. Nobody is managing their own hardware to a large extent. Even if the company's own hardware today, it is being managed by a vendor, and that vendor could be on the cloud, does not make a difference. There's a lot of uncertainty in future support, because technology is very short-lived. Who uses native Hadoop today? What percentage of people? The word big data started with Hadoop. Very few people, I mean, there's probably 1% of people who still use Hadoop for something. Otherwise, it has moved on. So technology is changing fast. You don't know if that is going to be supported. The total cost of ownership is going to be higher, because you have to maintain technology, buy support from different vendors. The performance and cost control, right? You cannot delete something, spin off something. Compliance, high availability DR. So if there are challenges in any of them, migrate. To migrate, you need to do some planning, you need to do that activity, look at cost and look at support. Okay, so these are the challenges that people generally have, and for that we have a migration program. Okay, we are saying that in 17 weeks time, if you're running Mapr, Hadoop, Cloudera, anything anywhere else, I mean, this is not a slide to say you come and use the accelerator program, but I'm just saying that there's support available out of the box for Microsoft, where a Microsoft representative is available for you full time. You have to participate in the design phase. The data will move, that is somebody else's responsibility. Come back, help do the testing, and there's a period in which it is run parallelly. Just that the use case need to be strong. With this kind of hand holding, migration is a cakewalk. So previously, if you thought it was risky, there was complexity, time and cost, with HDInsight Migrator acceleration, all that becomes pretty much simpler, right? So we have made it safer, simpler, faster and cost optimized in terms of a value proposition. So the takeaways that I have is open source analytics in the cloud is growing. Evaluate, just because I said Spark or Storm, evaluate, see what is right. Using the right engine is very important. Dig deeper, learn from the community and migrate, okay? Because being on the cloud and using open source technologies is the coolest thing right now. Okay? Here are some resources for you to go take a look at as next action items. The timer says I'm actually 2-3 minutes over time. So any questions that you have, I'll be happy to answer. If you want to take a look at the portal, create something. If these people have another 5 minutes for question and answers, we could do that as well. But the cluster won't completely spin up, but you can look at the options. Azure Databricks is a third-party component, right? And we made it first-class citizen on Azure, okay? So whatever components are there in HDInsight is available in Databricks and vice versa. How Databricks will only support Spark. So tomorrow, if you want to do anything else, like if you want to do Hive in the same thing, you won't be able to do it. It's a partner tool which is there. I mean, it's like saying we have SQL Server, but we also support MySQL, Postgre, MariaDB and Oracle on Azure, right? So Databricks is a first-class citizen on Azure. That means we have integrated with AD. You get single billing. Those advantages are there because the integration is deep. But HDInsight is our native homegrown thing which has got integration with a lot of other things. Good one. I mean, today if you're considering between the two, the innovations in HDInsight is higher, far higher when compared to what is available with Databricks. Databricks is only Spark as well. So consider that.
You guys want to see the demo?
This is portal.azure.com. If you don't have a subscription to a portal or access to one, if you have MSDN access, you will get access to the portal, $150 per month and all of it. If you don't have a trial, sign up for a free trial. For that, I will even say go create a new email ID, sign up with that email ID. Will ask you for your credit card information. Do not be very hesitant in giving it. There will be no cost charged to it. Okay. So make sure you have something. Okay. So the portal that you see and I see will be slightly different because there is this ms.portal.azure.com, that is the preview portal. So all preview features are enabled by default. So you will probably see it like this, okay? Because in the preview the hamburger menu will go away. You click on create a resource, okay? And say I want to create an HDInsight cluster and it comes up, right? And then we'll click on create. So how do you go about creating this? Here you go. The basics, right? You have to have an Azure subscription. If you have signed in, like you can see, if you have signed in, then it will automatically take up the subscription. If you have access to different subscriptions, then it comes up in the drop down portal over here. Make sure you are using the right subscription. All right. And then there is this concept of a resource group. So what is this concept of a resource group? Anything to do with role-based access control, you put it in one resource group. So if you want to give access to somebody, if you want to make sure a set of people have access only to the development environment, a set of people have access only to the database side of things, you can do that using resource group. Everything needs to reside within a resource group. Make it clean, okay? And then you give your cluster a name. So we will say this is what we are spinning up at Nimhans. You have different regions on which there is availability. There are 54 regions in the world. We have the largest number of it. So wherever you need to be there, it would be there, not an issue. In India, we have 3 data centers. I'm sure you're all aware of it. But I will still pick up Southeast Asia to run my cluster. Okay. And then this is the nice stuff. I had a PPT to say how will you go about selecting the cluster type, and here you go. So if you want to do Hadoop, Spark, Kafka, HBase, interactive query, Storm or ML service, which is our server, you have all of this. So if I say I want to create a Spark cluster, go and create it. Okay. Now here within this, it's giving you different combination of what you can choose. Okay. Too big. Okay. So 2.3 and HDI 3.6 is the latest version. HDI 4 is like preview versions. So we'll go with a strong base, which is Spark 2.3 and HDI 3.6. If you want to go with, you can either choose SSH or otherwise. If I had not chosen Spark, but if I had chosen Hadoop, it would have asked me if I want to spin it off on Windows or on Linux. Okay, and I will give my username and password to log into my head node. The usual, at least one letter capital, one special character and number is needed. And then this was the basic slide, right? One second. Okay. This was the basic one where we decided which region, what username and password we'll use, and what type of cluster we want to do it. The next is where we did the storage one, right? Did you want a blob store or an ADLS store? So here you say I want to use Azure storage. If you want to create a new one, you can create it over here, or by default, if you want to pick it up from the list, you can do that as well. It will go into a container. So there is hierarchy of things. There is it's like saying I'm doing on D drive. Inside that there is a folder which is like a container. And then if you want to go with data lake or I add additional storage, you can do that. Now, if you want to put your metastore in database for Hive or for Oozie is like an ETL tool, you can do that as well. You have to go spin it up separately on the portal, and then it would come in the drop down and you say you do this, right? Then we said the next thing to do is network and security. Okay, so if you have got an NSG in that region, it will automatically do it. Okay, and how will you manage your identity? So these things are dependent on the region. You will have to configure that before and come back. And here is the pricing consideration and the auto preview feature. So I said there are different kinds of options, right? The D series, the DV2 series, the D3 series and so on. Here you get it. So if I choose a 4-core 32 GB for the head node, we'll go with this. Okay. The head nodes are fixed at 2. You cannot change that. You can change the size of the VM, but it has to have built-in availability. The worker node, you can choose what you want to. I will reduce the size of the worker node here, and I will say enable the auto scale. So it says, do you want to do it based on load or based on the schedule time? Okay. If you pick up the schedule time, it will say, configure, go and configure the time, the date when you want it to happen. Otherwise, I just do it based on load, and I will say minimum I want 1, maximum I want 10. So the cost will vary from 0.37 cents to 3.74 cents, $3.74 per hour. The total estimated cost is given. All right, and then you can review all that you have chosen so far in terms of storage, security, networking, configuration and pricing, and it's taking a while because it needs to configure, and you click on create button. You needed to have a subscription, and you could set up all of this. The role between developer and administrator is, and the hardware folks and the software folks is all merging, right? You have no dependency on anybody else. You have got a summary of all that we have chosen here. Internal consumption in this resource group, Southeast Asia, this one admin, SSH is enabled, storage and all of it, and then you click on create button. Because it has to create at least 3 VMs, put it all in a network and things like that. It will take a few minutes for it to spin up, and then you can log into the machine using SSH as usual and do what you would want to with it. The best thing is I have got something spun up. I will take you there, because there we will see what are the additional things that we will get, right? This is a cluster I created like half an hour back, okay, when I came into this room first, because I wanted the cluster to be created. You have Zeppelin notebooks, Jupyter notebooks, even the Spark history server, which will show you what queries you have run, is all available out of the box. You go, you open all of this. It will take a while. If you want to do Jupyter notebooks, it comes integrated with Azure notebooks. Okay, you can go and start writing queries. So the best thing is, for everything we give an UI and try and make it simpler, right? So we were having we were having a conversation once at IIM Bangalore to see is Java better, because there's a huge set of Java developers, or is Python better for machine learning? Okay, and then that was the previous talk. So we went in and we demoed something called Azure ML Studio. Okay, This is a complete drag and drop interface in which you can build a model, a data science model, and deploy it at a single click. Finally, they said, that was a debate that was going on in the room. They said, I think what is going to work finally is just the drag and drop piece. So writing code is, we had rapid application tools for a long time where, people would do things faster, quicker. So initially we had LOC as one of the things, right? How many lines of code will it take for you to write something like that? That was an estimation point. That no longer is true because it's all auto-generated. What I'm saying is there is some thing, right? I mean, if everything is being done with the help of a UI, then it is not good. That is one mindset that you have to kind of play around with a little bit, because everything is going to come up with an UI. Now, if you are speaking commands to drive a car like Tesla or do anything like that, I mean, if you are asking somebody to make calls, it will not be very far. If you can ask somebody to unlock your car, unlock your house, you're saying, withdraw so much money from an accounting system, you are trusting the voice, the AI behind that to do a lot of things. I know there's a lot of things about security, but get used to the fact that, things will open up in like this, okay? In things like this, and it will show it to you. Once you have created the cluster size, you can go increase another minute or two. You can still increase or decrease the cluster sizes over here. Okay, it's not that it is hard bound and set in rule. You can go and set up some quota limits to say don't go beyond these many number of cores. If you want to add additional storage or things like that, you can do. Scripts, if you want to enable, like start up with this big script. You can do some pre-assisted, you can submit a new exe or sh or something like that. Select a script, put it and say run it on bash on the head worker or on zookeeper, right? So when the HDInsight itself will spin up, it will come with all of these. And I want to just show you the tools integration. I mean, this again may not be very popular because there is HDInsight tools for Visual Studio, for IntelliJ and things like that. You can look at the demo video here once you spin it off. Otherwise, my intention was to actually do it. Okay, so you can do a few things from here. It's that easy to spin up something and you have a lot of control. So the script you will still have to write, but just because it's offering you some kind of an interface, don't assume that it is lightweight to do stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? You have any questions, comments, thoughts?
You have just given the load from 1 to 5, but how many nodes, worker nodes it would scale? So that we have not
The
done.
minimum will be 1. I'm saying the max can be 5. So when the workload increases, if it finds that the CPU and memory utilization is above 70%, it will spin off a second one. After 15 minutes, it's all there in the documentation. So it can wait 15 to 20 minutes and then it will spin off a second one.
So the metering part is like, we define that, okay, the load is 70% and then you spin up one more node and all. But the load, so what you have shown is not the load percentage.
We are just giving the minimum, when does it spin off the next one?
Yes.
By now you do not have too much control on that, okay? It is predetermined when it is 65 to 70% full and it is full for more than 5 minutes, because suddenly you may see a spark, right? So it is full for more than 5 minutes, then it will go ahead and spin off a new cluster, but that will come up, because if you look at our web app, which is like an application tier, right? There we are saying you can control to a very fine grain. If it's a memory intensive application, you're monitoring only the RAM and saying if the RAM consumption goes up, go do it. Here there are 3 or 4 parameters, obviously CPU, RAM and IO. So especially CPU, RAM and monetization happens, and if it crosses the threshold, it will spin.
So it does automatically.
And it scales down also automatically,
okay.
Not just scale up.